We're going to go to Columbus, Ohio, or as I like to call it, Spielman City.
Well,
I mean, show me a place where there's a more popular family than the Spielmans in Columbus, Ohio, and I will be shocked. But the old Buckeyes put a hurting on Penn State. And Debo's Penn State guy. He said he didn't watch the game probably because he was jet setting around the world. Drew Aller, the quarterback coming out of the tunnel for Penn State, man, he looks the part. And I had high hopes for him. And even through the first two and a half quarters, like, okay, he looks like he has an opportunity to do some things, but that offense just never allowed him to do it. Part of that was because Ohio State played so well on both sides of the ball. But we're going to start with Ohio State offensively. This guy, let me get his name right, Marvin Harrison. I think he's going to be pretty good. I think he's going to be a ball player. My goodness. And tell me what you think of this, Rick. He had 9 catches for 1,000,000 yards. Tell me what you think of this. It feels like he is almost, I don't want to say going through the motions, but he's flipping. Like you say sometimes you can't just flip a switch and turn it on. You have to be going and stay going. It feels like Marvin Harrison Jr. can flip a switch because we saw earlier in the season he was frustrated with the lack of consistency maybe at the wide receiver position. I mean, at the quarterback position. And we saw some frustration early in this game on some balls that were within his humongous catch radius, but he didn't haul in. They would have been tough catches, but you probably expect him to catch those things. And then once he got rolling, that was a wrap. And I'm not just talking about running deep routes past Kalen King, who was in coverage for more than 50% of the snaps. And he had a tough chore ahead of him, no doubt about it. But you saw Marvin Harrison win on slants where in man coverage versus Kalen King, where he was wide ass open at the stem. And you don't necessarily see that a lot at any level of football. And I was just like, okay, he decided he was going to win on this route and win convincingly. And then he would do that consistently. And I'm not saying he's not playing hard every snap. It just felt like when he wanted to take it from fifth gear to overdrive, he could do that.
The way he played, and he came to play this game, and not saying he doesn't come to play every game, but the national stage, the implications and everything riding on this game. The winner probably has the lead right now going into the Final Four at the end of the season. Now, Ohio State still has Michigan to come up yet, but this tells you what type of player this kid's going to be in the NFL. He was just physically dominant in this game versus a really good Penn State defense, and he just took the game over. And like I said, when you see games like this, you see him perform like this, he has, not only is he going to be an impact player wherever he gets drafted, but he may have the potential to be, I would put a future Hall of Fame grade on him based off of this game.
I was muted. Sorry. You thought you went deaf for a second, didn't you? So what's that, an 8.0 or a 9.0, whatever the perfect grading scale, the weird grading scale?
Yeah, he would have had pretty much close to if he was a gymnast, I would have gave him a 10.
Mary Lou Retton. By the way, I was wrong there. He had 11 catches for 162. I had to scramble to find the numbers there. So again, he had the slow start to the season. We talked about the Indiana game back in early September where he seemed frustrated at times. The last 3 games, he's gone for 163 against Maryland, 105 against Purdue, and then 162 against Penn State. He has had some focus drops. I mentioned them briefly there. He had some against Purdue. You don't care about that, do you?
No, he's what you want to call him, generational player at his position. Once in every blue moon that you see a guy with this much talent, this much size, and his personality is the most humble, unassuming, almost quiet, introverted demeanor for a guy that has this much ability that I have interviewed.
On the Jalen Hurts scale of how much Rick loves this person, and Jalen's a 10, where would you put Marvin?
He's like a 9.
Wow. Okay. So
I was very impressed.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what the holes in this man's game are. I don't think they exist. And I've said it before. Scouts told me before. You don't have to find something wrong with the player. They just might end up being really good.
Yeah, this one's going to be really good.
Let me ask you this: so when you're talking about him in the spring, is this like a 30-second conversation, or there's not a whole lot to go through.
What are you talking about?
Like when you meet together as a staff to go over the prospects, you're going over the wide receivers, and Marvin's name comes up.
Yeah, this one's going to be probably a 10-minute conversation,
That's
especially
quick.
in 10 or 11 or 9 or 8.
Yeah. Right. The only reason to be a conversation if you're picking two and you need a quarterback and a wide receiver.
Yeah, or if you're going to try to be aggressive and trade up to go get him.
Oh yeah, like your good buddy Thomas Dimitroff did when he went up and get Julio Jones.
Yes.
Debo's new favorite Eagle, Julio.
Yep.
Number 80. He looks weird in that number 80 in the Kelly green. But he's looking for that Super Bowl ring. All right, I think this is I'm going to speak for you. I don't like to do this, but pop.
Yeah. No. Yeah. That's not even. That's
Sorry
like
for wasting your time.
Yeah. It's just like, what are we doing here? What are we doing with our lives?
All right, let's move on to the other side of the ball. The man that was tasked with D'ing up Marvin Harrison Jr. on a good number of the snaps there, Kalen King, cornerback out of Penn State, really good player. We talked about him over the summer. I watched him in the Iowa game earlier this year when Iowa ran 12 offensive plays. It felt like because Iowa's offense is from bedrock, played against Fred Flintstone University in terms of how antiquated that group is. But I'll ask you this. How do you evaluate, because this is the game that the NFL teams are going to look at first when you're talking about Kalen King as a potential first-round pick. How do you evaluate having a pretty tough afternoon against one of the best players on the planet? And one of those tough plays involves a defensive holding downfield, which feels like it's called half the time, but it was defensive holding. It negated a Curtis Jacobs fumble 6 that would have put them in the end zone, Penn State. And that was, if not a turning point, a pretty important part of that game. I thought Kalen showed that he could be physical in the run. He tried to be too physical, I thought, at times with Marvin, who's bigger and stronger and probably faster, and it was to his detriment. So how do you evaluate that sort of player?
He didn't play good. This is quite simple. He was not very good in this game. And that's a question you're going to have. Like, see him playing against the Big Ten receivers and put an overall grade on him. But this is a game you're going to come back to and hone in on, because he's going to have to play against dudes like Marvin Harrison Jr. in the NFL. And is he a true number 1 corner? Is he a number 2 corner? Is he just a nick potentially?
And he plays primarily outside right now.
Yeah. So there are going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of debate in that draft room on where this player belongs on your draft board, especially after the poor performance he had in one of the biggest games of the year to date. And those are the questions that you're going to pull this tape up when you have him in an interview, and you're going to have him talk through it. And we're going to see. Now, the one thing that I would love to see is, after having such a poor performance, how quickly does this guy forget? And does he come back and have one of his best games, and who they play next week?
Let me ask you, and unfortunately, it's hard to sort of forget the last 2 months of the NFL season, but who would you take first, his former teammate Joey Porter Jr. or Kalen King right now if you needed a cornerback?
Joey Porter Jr. right now, because I got that impression of when we had Joey Porter Jr., we talked about him when he made that interception. And then my last impression of this kid was this game.
Right.
So that's why you got to make sure you take a step back and not make critical judgments and look at the whole picture, and then hone into why he had so many struggles this game versus a premier receiver.
Yeah, I know why. He was playing Marvin Harrison Jr. That was why. And look, and the other thing is, in Joey Porter Jr.'s defense, he had a really good game against Marvin Harrison Jr. last year when they were matched up. They weren't matched up quite this frequently.
They didn't have a lot of matchups.
But he held his own, and the issue with him coming out was a little stiff, and the ball production, he's somehow getting interceptions like it's his job now. But all right, so tough outing for Kalen King. He's still one of the best cornerbacks in this draft class. So how he bounces back. Drop for me. I'm guessing you feel similarly.
It's 84 days. Yes, a drop, Ryan. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
All right, let's stay on the Penn State side of the football, but we'll go to left tackle. A guy we talked a lot about last year until he decided to return to school. A guy we talked about over the summer. and number 74 left tackle Olu Fashanu. I found out is how he pronounced his name, according to Joe Klatt. By the way, I love that guy. What's his name? Who's Joe Klatt's partner? Debo, who's awesome.
Gus Johnson.
Gus, thank you. Gus kept calling Marvin Mitsubishi. He called him Maserati Marv, which I sort of love. I don't know if it's a thing. Maybe they've been calling that for a while, but I love Maserati Marv. Did you call him that in the interview?
No.
Well, don't call him Mitsubishi Marv like I just did. He might get angry at that.
Yeah. How do you know he even likes that?
He may not. Olu Fashanu, number 74. I thought he did pretty well until JTT came over. Because JT Tuimoloau, number 44, the edge rusher, and we'll just lump them in together here for Ohio State, started on the defensive left, so he was facing off the right tackle. Then he would come over to Fashanu on the left side, and he gave Fashanu a handful, excuse me. And it was funny. It felt like Tuimoloau was going 87% against the right tackle and then 125% against Fashanu, and that was interesting to watch. But he won more than he lost, I thought, against Fashanu. And one of the notes I made, Rick, was how close is the race for OT1 between Fashanu and Joe Alt after this Ohio State game?
Yeah, I thought he had struggled some. I mean, I watched the game and he was good for the most part in pass pro, except when a game at the end there where JT just, got him on a spin move, walked him back. A couple of times for as athletic as Fashanu is, he was on the ground a little bit this game for whatever reason. He got tripped up on trying to react to a game. You still see the athleticism, the length. I still think he needs to get a little more. At times he finishes in the run game. A couple of times he got lazy on the backside, let guys cut across his face, trying to cut off the backside. But he did not have his best game either, I didn't think. And JT came across like he had a point to prove. And if you remember last year, this was when they played at Penn State. JT had maybe the greatest game of a defensive end ever had. He had like 2 sacks, 6 tackle for loss.
He let Myles Garrett out there.
Yeah, he had one of those Myles Garrett games. And I thought when you see these, you love the competition because you don't think JT knows who's Fashanu is.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants to put that on his resume, on his tape. So when the NFL teams, they're going to evaluate this matchup. And I thought for the that I would give the nod to JT over Fashanu in this game. I
agree. I thought Fashanu had very little trouble with Jack Sawyer, number 33, who we'll talk about throughout this process. Tyleik Williams, and he matched up a few times, number 91, a player who's on my top 50 and a guy that you like a lot. And Williams is
the
stout.
only reason he's on your top 50 is because I brought his name up.
You brought his name up, Pete Prisco Jr., and that's why I watched him before. You're exactly right. You discovered him. But also, how concerning, if at all, is it just a technique issue that maybe Fashanu got too high at times, that JT was walking him back into Allen's lap on more than one occasion?
It's not going to affect him as much as it's going to affect King, in my opinion.
Okay.
It's not going to affect his draft status. I still think he's going to be the first offensive tackle off the board and probably in the top 5.
Yeah.
But JT, and like I said, for whatever reason, if JT played against Penn State every week, he'd be maybe the number 1 overall pick, the way this kid, for the production he had last year and what he's shown this year in this game as well.
Is that a question you're asking him in the interview? Like why you only turn it up against Penn State? I mean, he's a good football player. Don't get me wrong. But
no, he plays hard every game.
Yeah.
And we the only criticism we had is we said he's more disruptive than productive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm not criticizing this kid any way, shape, or form. When you watch the tape on JT, he plays his rear end off every snap. He just not always consistent to finish. For whatever reason, but it's not due to lack of effort or lack of physical ability.
All right. So I agree with that, by the way. Pop or drop for Mr. Fashanu?
I'm going to give him a drop.
Yeah, I think I will too, but I love him. He's still a wide receiver. He's still offensive tackle 1 for me. I love Joe Alto, and we talked about him, so he's had a good season. And JT, What are you doing?
Pop.
Pop for old JT. Yeah, that was a great game for him. And it was funny. Every time he lined up over the left tackle, he cranked it up a notch too. Got after it, made some plays. So you like to see. All right, let's go to the other side. Chop Robinson had to leave the game early with what I think was a head injury. He did not look good on his way off the field. So hopefully he's okay. We've talked about him before. Oh, quickly, JT, I think is a first round pick. What do you think? Around the border?
Yep.
Okay.
I think if he finishes strong, that he's going to be a first round pick.
Okay. Yeah, I feel similarly. And the other thing is, in terms of the disruptive versus productive thing that you talked about, he's also 20 or 21 or whatever he is. He can get better.
He's got a huge upside.
It's like, not the same body type, but the same sort of Lucas Van Ness type. Yeah, Lucas Van Ness didn't do a whole bunch at Iowa, but I guarantee you he'll be a better football player in the NFL. I'm not comparing them as body types or players.
Oh, wait, 84 days. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's a great comparison, Ryan. You really worked on your homework. Boy, what pops into your head sometimes on this show? It's incredible.
I was thinking about the other day. Were we talking to, I can't even remember who we were talking to. I think we're talking to Anthony Richardson. And even you throw me under the bus every 35 minutes or so. It's like you can set your watch to it. But Danny was on set with us, and I mentioned Charlie Ward. And Danny almost threw the chair at me when I mentioned Charlie Ward. I was just trying to involve Danny in the conversation, his former teammate at Florida State. And Danny, like Rick, was hearing none of it. All right, moving on. And how disrespectful you were to Lucas Van Ness.
I like Lucas Van Ness as a player. He's not JT. He's not as athletic as JT.
No, but my point was that he is not a finished product. That's what I was trying to get at.
Well, you have a tough time getting to your end point because it is a long journey to get all the way back around to what you're trying to do. Because as soon as you say something that I guess in my mind doesn't make sense, then I've got to do a better job of not shutting you off right at that point. I've got to continue to listen to you explain why you come up with some of the, okay, I can't, 84 days, count to 10.
Asinine. You can use asinine.
No, unique.
Yeah, I'm a quarterback that never gets to the third read. He gets to the first read and then he gets sacked.
Yeah. And I'm the one that cut you off after the first read.
Yeah, you got to be a better quarterbacks coach. That's what I'm hearing.
I need to be a better listener, and I will work on that for the next 84 days.
And then all gloves are off. All right, let's talk about Adisa Isaac, who I have compared to JT Watt. I just made up that name, JJ and TJ. Let's see if I caught you. No, Adisa Isaac, the edge rusher out of Penn State. I mentioned earlier that Chop had to leave the game, unfortunately. And Adisa has been sort of flying under the radar. He's gotten some buzz from the Shrine Bowl, and he's on some watch list for sure. Number 20, the edge rusher there, lines up primarily as outside the tackles, a 7 or 9 technique. And he has a little juice. I like watching him play. I never paid attention to him until this game. He's a high motor guy, plays through the whistle, sideline to sideline, will run down plays from the backside. I thought he needed to get a little stronger at the point. And again, those are things you can certainly do as you grow and get older. Didn't have a lot in the way of pass rush moves. He just tried to win with speed or power, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. He did get a strip sack of McCord. McCord recovered it, but the fact that he got there and got home quickly is what you'd like to see. Can win sometimes with the games inside coming through the A gaps. So I was pleasantly surprised as a first viewing of a player who seems to have he's a high upside player for me.
Yeah, no, this first exposure I had to him as well, since he didn't make your top 50. But he was one of the
84 days, Rick.
Yeah, he was one of the 250 guys that didn't make your top 50. So, but I would say this: I loved his length. I loved his athleticism and speed. I do think he is a little tight in the hips, though. But the motor you can't teach, and what he lacks in technique right now, that can all be taught. So I was pleasantly surprised because the kid has length. He can run, a little tight, needs a lot of technique work, needs to get stronger in the run game, especially when he's reduced inside. But a couple of times, and I know Stover was hurt, the tight end from Ohio State, with a bad ankle, but he kind of shocked and shed him at the point a few times and kind of overpowered him. So this kid kind of popped out on the tape out of all the Penn State guys that didn't play very well this game. He was the one that I thought popped out of the guys we've talked about so far, at least as a guy that you would want to look at and do more research on.
Yeah. Felt like a mid to early day 3 guy based on potential, maybe, as we just sit here in middle October.
Yeah, if this guy has the length and runs fast, yeah, he'll be a early Saturday pick.
Do you remember Arnold Ebiketie out of Penn State? He plays for the Falcons now, I believe. Sort of longish Temple transfer. I was going to ask you to compare him to him, but if you don't have him at the top of your Rolodex.
I don't have Rolodex.
Yeah, I think he went late day 2, and he was an interesting prospect in terms of being raw, but with upside for sure. And I won't draw comparisons because I know you hate those, but I will ask you this.
Oh, I love him.
Pop or drop for Mr. Isaac.
He was the only pop for me on Penn State.
Yeah, no, I agree. You mentioned Cade Stover, by the ankle injury. He went out there and put a knee brace on and started making catches like his job, like his life depended on it. He had a pretty good game.
Tough hombre now.
He's incredibly tough. Former defensive player, I believe. I didn't watch him closely, just on the broadcast. Linebacker, yep. Yeah. They produce linebackers at Ohio State. I can't remember.
No,
none.
No.
Spielman City.